Welcome back, Junkies. Thanks for joining us for your daily Wealth Junkies show. Today, we're going to do some things a little bit different. We don't have any special guests here for you today, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into our backgrounds. And for today, we're going to listen to Will's background and dive a little bit deeper into him. For those of you that don't know, Will's a former college football player turned dropout, and where he got started in the mortgage industry shortly after that, where he operated in the top 5% of a national lender. And then he transitioned in the real estate world, ultimately founding CEO Capital Partners. Will, let's dive a little bit deeper into your story and let's hear about where you got started.
Yeah, Brandon, thanks so much. Really appreciate that intro. So if I were to give my story, I'd start back in high school. Um, I had always been entrepreneurial. Even before that, growing up, I started by what I would do is I lived on a golf course. So the house I grew up in, it backed to this public golf course, and the people that played there was a public course, so they weren't very good. So what I would do is I would go into the woods and where they where they'd shank their shots,
Right.
and I would find all the golf balls there that they hit there, and I would put them in a bucket, take them home, clean them up, and then I'd go across the street to a private golf course, and I would set up shop and I'd sell them. And I'd basically I had full awareness that I was 7 or 8, whatever I was, and appealed to them. I was this cute kid, whatever. And I remember one day I was probably 8 years old. I made over $100
Just selling
and
golf balls.
selling golf
And
balls.
really just you're spending your
Yeah.
time cleaning them other than that.
Yeah. And it was pure profit
Awesome.
because, I would find them. I didn't buy them or anything. So that was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I figured out if I wanted something, then I just had to figure out how to get it. It was never, I can't get this. It was, how can I get this? So, and I'd work, and eventually that led into me starting, I started selling things for people on eBay. So I sold a car, sold a motorcycle. I think it was 12 at the time, and got a commission from that. And eventually started cutting grass, and just always had that entrepreneurial spirit of just going out and creating something out of nothing. So
Right.
fast forward into high school, kind of went down the wrong path. And my sophomore year, it was New Year's, and it was the first time I ever drank. So I tried alcohol, and I'll never forget the feeling of that, just getting buzzed for that first time. And it was just something that I just wanted to chase and recreate that feeling. And so just started drinking heavily in high school at a pretty young age. I think I was 15 at the time. Shortly after my 16th birthday, I tried marijuana for the first time and just got hooked. I loved the appeal of, it was illegal. It was kind of the forbidden fruit, if you will.
Right.
So just started doing that all the time. Started smoking before school, doing drugs before school. Yeah, it was bad. I just got into that real bad. Would steal my parents. I think my dad was prescribed the sleeping pills and would take those before school. And I remember I would not remember what happened during the day, and people would
Uh,
have to
did you get
tell me.
caught at all in high school or
By
just
my parents,
yeah?
yes. I never got in trouble with the law.
Mhm.
I got sent to the guidance counselor a few times when they suspected that I was high, but never. There was nothing they could prove. So,
Right.
um, anyways, fast forward. I really was just skating by with C's and B's. I ended up getting into the University of South Carolina, and I went there after I graduated high school. And I already had a pretty bad drug habit. I was smoking weed every day. I was drinking a lot. And I went there, and now I was no longer under my parents' supervision.
Right.
So it just got exponentially worse, and just got into way worse stuff. Just all kinds of drugs. There was absolutely zero accountability. So just started doing some crazy stuff, and I loved it. The whole lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll was kind of what motivated me, and I
Right.
just never wanted anything other than to get drunk and loaded on whatever I could get my hands on. So I remember doing cocaine for the first time it was actually on Whitney Houston's, the day that she died. So it's
Oh,
kind
wow.
of ironic because that was part of what she had died from. And anyways, I was kind of going on a tangent there, but fast forward, the summer after my first full year at University of South Carolina, I came home and I have a summer birthday, and I ended up getting arrested for marijuana possession on my 19th birthday. So that wasn't fun. I was kind of joking with the cop to let me off because it was my birthday and he didn't have any sympathy on me, and
That was
got
terrible cops,
arrested.
huh?
Yeah, it wasn't fun. So yeah, exactly. After that, I went back to school for my last semester there, and I had already gotten in a bunch of trouble the prior school year. So I had these drug tests to take, and I had a few other things, and I ended up actually getting expelled from the University of South Carolina. And I remember just being like, I was almost relieved because now I didn't have to pass the drug test. And I remember going, and I was actually not smoking weed at the time. And right after that, I just went on kind of this bender and just was doing a ton of stuff. And then lo and behold, my parents end up talking to the university, and long story short, I end up getting back in. So I'm now, oh crap, I have to pass these drug tests. I don't know how to do that. I figure out a way to pass them.
Hmm.
So once I figured that out, I felt almost invincible. It was like, I can pretty much get away with whatever I want.
Right.
And I did that the rest of the year. I think I had 6 drug tests to take. I passed all of them. I faked all of them.
Hmm.
And just that was the worst semester. I was definitely on my worst behavior, and ended up coming home, got in a lot of trouble. I had this really bad blackout. And shortly after that, a family friend reached out to me right around New Year's, 4 years after I had drank for the first time. And he reached out and just said, "Hey, I think we should sit down. I think this is bigger than what you think. It wasn't just an isolated you getting drunk or whatever." So by the grace of God, I ended up agreeing to sit down with him and talk. And he told me his story, and it was identical to mine. And he was an alcoholic that was 18 years sober. So
That's
shortly
awesome.
after that, I admitted to my family and everyone that I do have a problem with alcohol and drugs. And I ended up making the decision to come home from school and get sober. So about a year, and that was all by the grace of God. I've always been a Christian, but even in all the craziness, I was a Christian. But really, after that, that's what I clung to, and that's what got me to stay sober. So about a year after that, I ended up walking on. I was focused now, and I ended up walking on and playing football at a school in Ohio.
Were you sober at this time after?
I
Yeah.
was. Yeah, yeah. So I was about 14 or 15 months sober
Awesome.
by the time I did that, and ended up walking on there. Had an awesome experience, but I had double hip surgery about a year after being on the team. And that was the end of that.
Mm.
So I ended up coming home, didn't really know what I was going to do with my life, but as I talked about in the beginning of this, I've always been entrepreneurial, always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So I knew I wasn't going to have a job, so to speak. I'm not a good employee.
Right.
So, so a family friend ends up talking to me one night. I was living with my parents at the time, and he tells me about the mortgage business, and I didn't know anything about it. I was kind of flirting around with going into becoming a realtor, and I end up he convinces me to learn more about that. So I sit down, I do an interview with him, and long story short, he ends up hiring me, and I start in the mortgage business, just learning the business, everything that goes along with it, all about debt to income, loan programs, the different guidelines, so on and so forth. And about a year after that is when I started. Actually, I got out into sales. If I had it my way, I would have went day one, but he knew that a 22-year-old with no life skills needed to sit and learn for a while.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was good that he forced me to do that. So after that, I just started. I worked 7 days a week. I grinded. I lived, breathed, slept mortgages, and I would go to open houses on the weekends. I would meet realtors, and I would try to develop a relationship with them so that they would send me business. And after doing that for a while, just grinding, it kind of came on overnight. Um, and that spring, I really just got overwhelmed with business, and it was great. So I had a very good first year, and I ended up, actually prior to that, even before I started um, originating loans and being in sales, I ended up buying a house, and I had my dad co-sign. So I learned all about real estate, and I was like, I need to buy a house.
Hmm.
But at the time, I was on a small salary, and it's just in the Northern Virginia area outside DC. You just can't find anything for what I was,
Yeah, it's
the
ridiculous.
salary that I was on. So, so I had my dad co-sign. I knew I could rent out. It was a 3-bedroom house, townhouse. I knew that I could live in one room and rent out the other 2 rooms and be able to pay the mortgage just fine. So I pitched it to my dad, and I had him co-sign and put up the down payment. And I just said, "You do that. I'll give you a piece of the deal, and I'll do the rest. I'll pay the mortgage. I'll do everything. I'll rent it out. You don't have to worry about a thing." So of course he made that deal. It was a
Yeah.
great deal for him.
Yeah.
And that's how I bought my first house. And I just remember that first month, I had the 2 tenants that were living with me. One was my brother, and one was a family friend. They paid me the rent, and it was just kind of this light bulb moment went off where I realized the power of rental real estate. So in passive income, making money when you're sleeping.
Right.
So from
How,
there, yeah,
how old were you when you bought the first house?
I had I was barely 23.
Okay.
So, and after that, like I said, I started originating loans and had a decent first year, was living well below my means, really didn't know what to do with the money I was making. I put it all in the bank. And once I saw the bank account grow to a point where it kind of hurt to see all that money in there not making any money, it was really losing money because of inflation. I, I said, you know what, the only thing I know is real estate. So I went out and bought another house, and I moved into that one, turned the old one into a full rental. And then about 11 months later, the same thing happened where I was just pretty cash heavy. So I bought another house. And after getting to 3 houses, I realized that it wasn't as scalable as I thought. I originally thought I was just going to buy a townhouse every year, and I was just going to keep doing that. And eventually, over time, I would build a good amount of wealth for myself.
Hmm.
And that is true, but I just, it wasn't producing the passive income that I would have wanted to, and
Right.
it just wasn't as scalable as I thought.
Yeah, it would
So
take too much time.
yeah, exactly. So that's what led me into multifamily. So I just started learning all about that, devouring every piece of every book, every podcast, everybody I could talk to that had any experience in that world. I did. I reached out to them, and um, within 5 minutes I realized it was this is what I need to do. So this is 100% scalable. It's 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 it, it's much more. This sounds crazy, but it's much more easy to manage the more units you have,
Hmm.
because it can afford a good property manager. And so I just learned all about that and jumped out. I started my own entity and was doing it on my own for a while, and was doing okay, was having some successes, but not a ton. And then obviously you and I connected, and we had went to high school together, but kind of stopped. We never really hung out in high school or after, but we came together, and I reached out to you and just saw that you were doing the same thing. You were looking for multifamily deals, and so I reached out. We connected, and shortly after that, is when we started CEO Capital Partners, and it's been very successful. And we've been able to be a co-sponsor in 3 deals, and we have, as of recording this, we have a fourth one closing next month, and it's exciting stuff. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like there's still a lot that, in those years that a lot happened. And I just got a few things that kind of
Yeah,
stuck out to me. So you said the family friend kind of reached out to you and noticed that the problem was bigger than you thought it was.
yeah,
Was there something that he said to you that kind of stuck with you or made you realize, oh shit, I have a problem? Or
yeah.
kind of walk me through that conversation where,
Sure. Yeah.
the turning
So
point.
right. So I remember I was meeting with him in his living room. I was such a punk at the time. I don't know why I even agreed to go over there, but I did. And he starts. I think I was pretty defeated at the time. I had a black eye from a friend punching me because I said something to him that was not nice. And I don't even remember doing it. I was blacked out, but I was pretty defeated. So I went there pretty open minded, and um, my parents were all upset at me because I ruined they were on this getaway, and I called them and they ended up coming home because they thought I was going to hurt someone or myself. So I was defeated, and I was sitting there, and he just start to answer your question. He starts telling me his story about how he started drinking when he was 14, and then it progressed into this, and then he started blacking out. And I was just listening to that and just thinking, this story sounds insane. This guy sounds like an idiot. Why did he keep doing this? But at the same time, I was thinking, this is exactly my story. How can I not see that I'm doing this exact same thing? So that's kind of what got me to realize that um, that I was an alcoholic and
Right.
a drug addict. So
So yeah,
um,
just kind of hearing it from somebody else's standpoint
exactly,
just kind of clicked with you and realizes I'm doing some dumb stuff and made you
yeah,
turn around. So you went and played football for a little bit, and I played a little bit of college football too. So I know
yeah.
being around the football guys and stuff. How was it trying to stay sober? With those
So,
with those guys, and
yeah,
they're not always the best influences on
no,
your
they're
outside activities.
they're
So
not. They were awesome guys.
yeah,
I loved everything about it. I love the guys, love the camaraderie. But you're absolutely right. I mean, they weren't doing anything that I was doing
Mhm.
when I was at my worst, but they were smoking a lot of weed, and
Of course.
that was definitely tempting. And I always I don't necessarily have an issue with weed. I think it's a lot less harmful than a lot of other substances, but for me, it's, my weed bone is connected to my booze bone, which is connected to my Xanax bone. So it just all leads to the same thing for me. And it was I had to just remove myself from a lot of situations. I went to bed early and
Yeah,
woke up
and
early.
you look like the loser in that situation, but
Exactly.
you know what's best for you, and you see the future for yourself. So that's good that you could handle that.
Well, thank you.
So, um, you mentioned some multifamily stuff. We haven't dived too deep into multifamily, in this show here. But you mind giving the listeners just a little bit more about what multifamily is? What's considered multifamily,
Sure.
and kind of what CEO Capital Partners does.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a multifamily property is simply an apartment building or apartment complex. So it's many units under one roof, and um, i- i- that's that's essentially what it is. So how to look at it and why it appeals to us is that the way that residential properties are valued is by the comparable sales. So your neighbors all around you, if their houses sell for less than what you think yours is worth, you're at the mercy of whatever they sell their houses for. Whereas commercial real estate, there is a piece that is outside of your control called a cap rate. And I don't want to get super deep into the weeds there, but um, but the main thing that drives the value of the property is the income that it generates. So you can have two identical apartment buildings right next to each other on the same street, same everything. But if one is being managed terribly and the rental income is not good, maybe they have bad tenants in there that are not paying, maybe there's a lot of deferred maintenance that they're not keeping up with, then and the other building is being ran very efficiently, very well, good tenants, and everybody pays on time. The two buildings, even though they're right next to each other in the exact same building, one is going to be valued higher than the other because it's producing a lot more income.
Hmm.
So what we do at CEO Capital Partners is we look to identify those properties that have issues and have problems, and we come in and negotiate a deal with the owner of the current owner of the property, and buy it from them. And because we're coming in there and there's a lot of management issues or maintenance problems, we're able to buy it at a discount. And those are all the fixable problems that we look for. So we can identify those problems and say, you know what, we can come in and make this better and make this more efficient and drive the income up. And ultimately that drives the value up of the on the property. And that's how you create some income for our investors and for ourselves. So we are raising capital to purchase these properties. So if somebody out there is a business owner or they're a high level executive and they don't have a ton of time to buy real estate, like I said, buying houses is not ideal. It's a headache to manage, and it's just overall it's just tough to deal with, especially if you're a very busy individual. That's who we look for, and that's kind of the problem that we solve. So those people are they don't have the time to deal with that. So that's where we come in, and we create these opportunities where they can invest passively and essentially just stroke a check and own a small piece of a large pie. And the idea is, if the business plan goes correct, it's to create passive income and distribute it to our investors, and then eventually sell the property down the road and realize that appreciation that was created by us executing the business plan.
Very cool. That definitely sounds, much more scalable than, the single family homes. Now, the single family real estate isn't a bad idea, but the multifamily, you can scale much quicker and create
That's
much
right.
more wealth. So yeah, it sounds like, CEO Capital Partners is working hard. Um, well, I'm going to throw a quick twist in here on you. I'm
Yeah.
going to hit you with our moments of truth.
All right.
All right. So we're going to get the first question. Who's your success role model?
My success role model would be my father. So I know that sounds cliche, and I'm trying not to do that, but it would definitely be my father. So he's a business owner, and he's always taught me the entrepreneurial mindset. Where one example is to go, and instead of going up the ladder, instead of moving up the ladder, try to own the ladder. So that's what I've been taught ever since a young age, and it's definitely gotten me to where I am today.
Awesome. What do you think your biggest success is so far?
My biggest success, hmm, I'll stick to business wise. It would definitely be forming the group with CEO Capital Partners. It's an awesome group that we have. There's 5 of us. And it's just a tremendous group. We're all on the same page, and we're all after the same thing. And we truly feel like we're adding value to people
Yeah.
in their lives. So
Cool. And hopefully, CEO Capital Partners, we can create some more successes to add to that.
yep, that's right.
What's a typical day for you look like?
So I wake up around 5:15, and I do a quasi version of the Morning Miracle. So it's an awesome book, and that's what I do. I wake up, do a tiny bit of it's not really meditating. It's kind of just sitting there and just trying to be quiet. And I get into my Bible, read the Bible, and then I kind of hit the ground running from there, start the day. And I typically write handwritten thank you notes to people at 7 a.m. And as I go forward, I try to keep my day time blocked. The night before is when I plan out the following day, and I just get whatever needs to be done during the day, whether I'm working, 9 to 10 hours or 16 hours. I just get what needs to be done,
Right.
and then plan out the following day. So
Yeah, staying organized. I like it.
Yep.
What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote. It's up on my wall right here. It's by Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. So I think that's an awesome. I think it's an awesome quote.
Mhm.
It can be applied on both sides of it. So what a lot of people don't realize is that he said that in response to somebody talking to him about a fighter that he was going against that had this game plan to beat Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson was basically like, they can plan all they want, but when I come in and hit you in the mouth, then it's out the window.
Right.
So that's it. It's also good to have that in mind for when you are making plans, because things change, stuff happens, and you get punched in the mouth every now and then. So it's all about just rerouting from there and redirecting and getting refocused.
Yeah. What's the best? Skipping a question here. Sorry. What are some of your hobbies
Outside of
outside
building
of
businesses,
building businesses, being an
yeah.
entrepreneur?
So I enjoy shooting. I do like the second. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I enjoy
Yeah.
shooting. I have some guns. I actually have I have a flamethrower as well,
Okay.
so that's definitely fun.
Yeah.
Maybe one day we can record that on a
Yeah. And get a nice
a video.
podcast with the
Yeah.
flamethrower.
So I have a fully functional flamethrower, so that's pretty fun. Just doing stuff like that.
Awesome.
But I'm a adrenaline junkie, so
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it with the
yeah,
flamethrower.
I'm sober now, so I have to find my fix in
Yeah.
other places. So
What's one of the best business books you've ever read?
best business book is the one that really changed it's not necessarily a book in the sense that it gives you a step-by-step plan on what to do, but it it it's more of a mindset thing, and it was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I know that you ask 10
Yeah, a lot
people,
of people say
9 of
that,
them
but
are gonna say that
they
book.
they say it for a reason. So
Right, exactly. But it's Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's the little purple book that changed my life.
yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah.
So if there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, or really any piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Let me think for a second. So what is I would say take action, and don't have paralysis by analysis. So if there's one thing that I noticed when I was getting started in the mortgage business, there were people that had been doing this way longer than I had, and they overanalyzed things. And there were also a couple people that started at the same time I did that are no longer in the business, and they were out of the business very fast. And I was able to find success because I didn't really think, I just did. And I made mistakes, and I just corrected course from there, and just learned by making mistakes on what works. So I would say take action and don't overthink things. That's pretty simple, but
Yeah, that's
yeah.
some good advice. There's a lot of people that aren't
Thank you.
taking action; they're doing a lot of thinking. So,
Yep.
all right, junkies. Well, that's going to wrap things up. Will, we appreciate you sharing your story. I know it's not always easy, putting the story out there, but I think there's probably some people out there that can really relate to your story and hopefully find some inspiration. Um, Before
Thanks,
we
Brandon.
close out here, don't forget to follow us on Facebook. It's at facebook.com/groups/wealth junkies. There we're going to have lots of our interviewees. They're going to be part of the group. You can ask questions, any advice, share your stories as well. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Don't miss a daily show, and leave a review for us so we know how we're doing. Again, Will, thanks for sharing your story with us, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Thanks, Brandon.